Conversations with Elders, hosted by yours truly, Louis-Virie Blanche, welcoming you to Glastonbury Radio 432, where we will be TED Talking in tongues with the elders of all ages, all generations, all races, cultures, and creeds. All gender, religious, or political preferences will be honored and encouraged on Glastonbury Radio 432, Conversations with Elders, where it is our treasured pleasure to roll out the red carpet of golden liquid love light to you in honor of the Queendom Come, soul dancing free to life's heartbeat drum, in honor of mother, daughter, sister, lover, priestess, goddess, friend, sharing the blessings of love's perfect stranger, Deja Vu, welcoming you to Glastonbury Radio 432.
It's too cosmic, much too cosmic for me. Much too cosmic.
So we say aloha, hola, aho, hello, high
Hello.
five. We are here with Dr. Mosen,
Thank you.
and we're going to discuss earth building,
Rammed Earth, yes.
rammed earth.
Yeah. And now, one of the issues, as the scarcity of, there is a scarcity in the housing. There is shortage of housing right now, even in America, not alone, in other places, which is most developing countries. So there is shortage of housing because, as we had talked earlier, some time ago, there is 5 different things that is basic to life for every community, whatever culture they are. One is food. So our food is very much processed now. It's not very good. The next is shelter. And our shelters is processed now a lot. Look at how much they have to process wood, how much they have to, all the material we are using, there is more processed material in building than there is in our food. But it's not really regulated, but it off gases and it's very toxic. So then, it's our health, it's food, shelter, health. And then, it's our education, learning things, and all that stuff, and energy, which is, it has become fossil fuel instead of, old fashioned, which was passive solar, and it was solar. So it's energy, food, shelter, health, and education. Those are the very basic needs of any family or society that we go.
Energy, food, shelter, health, and educarement, we're going to call it, right?
Educarement, yes. Education should be educarement. That means there has to be a care for people you're educating, because when there is educarement, the students learn from the teacher as much as teacher learns from the students. And good example of that, Buckminster Fuller at age 72, all of a sudden, and the first graders shook him up. So that's why educarement is a subjective education, that it means in open ways. And some places, the guy, Yusuf Islam, which used to be, previously used to be, his name was, what is his name? The guy, who wrote a song for his son, father and son.
Eric Clapton?
No, it was,
I know, Cat Stevens.
Cat Stevens, yeah.
Yes.
His name, he changed his name to Yusuf Islam.
Yes, you said.
So what happened?
Yes.
He has started a series of schools in Europe, and it's all based on subjective education, which is educarement. That means it's an open education, open communication between the student and teacher. And they have some of that school actually in Italy. That means the teacher and the students, they learn from each other. It's a both way, it's an open way. It's not just teacher shoving his ideas into, or her ideas into the poor student. It's an open education. So it's educarement. So Energy has to be synergy, just like it used to be in the old days. It used to be earth energy. It used to be sun. It used to be wind. There was no fossil fuel as we have today. Everything is based on fossil fuel. Our material for building, it's all fossil fuel driven, and it's all, toxic. There's a toxicity in the building material. And then, right now there's a scarcity of housing all over the world, the scarcity of food. So how do we really change this in the old-fashioned ways? Now, the scarcity of, let's say, housing in US is because of scarcity of wood, because the forests are all denuded. They have used all the forest and lumber. The price of lumber has gone so high. So therefore, all of a sudden, it's impossible to build houses. It's very expensive. So we have to go to alternative, which is alternative material, which is the constitution of Earth. Earth material is the constitution of Earth. So with this, we have to build houses, which is earth material. There is no transportation of material. There's a lot of cost of transportation of material to the site. So when we go to rammed earth houses, rammed earth dams, you don't have to transfer anything. You don't need high sophisticated equipments.
You get your building materials right where you're building.
Yes. And then, there is experience of generation after generation what to do with this earth material. For example, if they have adobe or mud, they can maybe add some sand to it or add some lime to it. It becomes caliche. In South America, Middle East, Africa, they used to do all that. Caliche, and if they do something a little bit of straws and all that, they can also actually produce something called calcrete, which is almost as strong as concrete, not as strong as concrete, but maybe 2/3. So it's enough. If you look at ancient building like Hagia Sophia or the Dome of the Rock, all of these wonders of the 7 wonders of the world, they were built with earth material. There was no steel beam or there was no timber beam or nothing like that. And it has lasted for hundreds of years. So we have to have a little paradigm shift here in viewing housing, food, and also our education, health. Health has to become naturopathic, not pharmacomatic. That means, naturopathic means getting people off the drugs. Pharmacomatic means, pathic, means, put people on drugs.
And if we're living in these houses that have all these toxic materials, we're not only are we taking drugs, but we're living in a drug environment. Actually, the toxins are permeating our atmosphere.
If you look at your PowerPoints of, let's say, about a year ago or so, we talked about indoor air quality.
Right.
And you notice number 5 in terms of risk to public health is indoor air quality. Because so much more than food, there is so much toxin, they have used in production of all the material we use in the building. So how do we do that? How do we do this first part of it, synergy? That means, let's say, solar energy or earth energy or wind and all that stuff. Or water energy. I mentioned, that we can do Glover salt, which stores a lot of heat. So we have to have walls, and instead of being insulated with you, it should be a wall which is insulated with O. Insolation versus insulation. Right? So insulation, if I can say this right, insulation stops the flow of heat from in to out or out to in. So that means no heat transfer. Insolation, which is passive solar architecture, it means a storage of heat, a storage of synergy in the wall. But the designer have to be aware how to do the time lag of the wall, that this heat is released to the inside at the time when it's coldest, and it stores in itself at the time when it's warmest. So Therefore, that's called time lag or attenuation in technically. But I have 84 different walls that does that. For example, it stores the heat, what thickness it has to be, what material we are using in order to accommodate attenuation or time lag to give it inside when it's coldest. And it stores it. So the issue of insulation becomes a conspiracy in architecture. Insulation.
Installation,
So
not
we have,
installation.
yeah, when we say insolation with O, we are talking about passive solar design. Now, passive solar design, it has three components. One is how do we design this wall or this house or this shape that it's a collector of solar energy.
It harvests
Two,
vibration.
yes, yes. And then what material have we used that it can store, and what thickness of the wall and all that. The thickness changes from climate to climate. It's not the same 2x4 from north to south and south, east and west. So what material, what thickness for each climate we have chosen to store the heat and release it. So it is collection, is storage, and release when it's needed. So there are walls, that all along the history they designed like that. I have 84, some of those I registered. So we can do walls, to do that. So therefore, all of a sudden we are complying with the constitution of the nature, not condition of my thinking.
Mm-hmm.
So that means,
Constitution of nature becomes our guide.
Yeah, not, see, we have in every concept, we have constitution, we have condition. I cannot change the constitution, but I can change the condition. So my condition should be subordinate to the constitution of creation, not my constitution.
So the process that you worked with, was it aircrete?
Aircrete is a good use. It doesn't have any thermal capacity to store heat, but it's a very good material to use for fireproofing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Now you were mentioning, I was talking to you about this, the people in Uganda and building. You were saying the storage of for water would actually
Yes.
create an energetic process.
Yes. See what happened if the storage, that's why you notice all water storages in the old days, it used to be 4 or 5 meters, or let's say 12, 15 feet below the surface. So the muddy, let's say glacier water, or glacier water, like, let's say tons of people, or Middle East people, Afghanistan, Iran, or all those places, Persia, Middle East, and Palestine, all those areas. When the glacier water came, they put it in lower in the really deep storage with a really geometrical shape of the storage. And this, with Schumann resonance, deionized the water, because ionization of water means there is a molecule of water here. And if you notice, there is a lot of other attachment to the water, other junk stuff. So it takes ion or energy to really attach these things to the molecule of water. So the molecule of water becomes bigger, and it cannot be assimilative no matter how much water we drink.
Because we can't process it, we can't take it in.
So when we deionize water, we deionize that energy, and all of a sudden all these other things which is attached to the molecule of water, it falls down, falls apart. So then we have pure water, which we call it distilled water or deionized water. And that water, the size of the water is the size of vasopressin receptor, which is the receptor of water in every given cell. So the water can be assimilative now. Mm-hmm. Before, if they call total dissolved solid. That means TDS. If it's more than 5, it doesn't assimilate into the human cell. It becomes accumulative. So that's why we want distilled water or deionized water, which is TDS, total dissolved solid, around that molecule of water is less than 5. Distilled and deionized water is about 1 to 3, so it's safe. So there are equipment that you can deionize water or distill water these days. But in the old days, they didn't have these equipment. So there's a natural way to do that. And that's, storing it underground about 15 feet, let's say 12 to 15 feet below the surface. Schumann resonance automatically, naturally deionizes the water. So the top part of it is very deionized water. The bottom is the slurry. That is the slurry is the best fertilizer for the garden.
Now say that again. Slurry?
When the water, the slurry, SLURY.
Mm-hmm.
It's like muddy water,
Right.
That is a good fertilizer for the soil, for the garden. So once in a while, if they clean their tank, they take that stuff and put it on the garden.
So the tank that you're speaking of being made of earth materials,
yes,
has to have a very specific, you called it a phi dome.
Yes.
The phi dome shape, the material, the dimension, proportion, all is very, very important factors.
Yes.
And the storage, it actually, the shape actually has a synergetic function.
Yes, it's anything which resonate with nature. It has synergetic collection. Resonation, one of the first condition of resonation, I think I had a presentation I sent you some time ago. First condition of resonation is similarity. That means two things are similar, they resonate. Like you have two clocks, it's exactly the same way. One of them going this way, the other one going this way. They have shown that after a while, they go both, the same way.
They synchronize, yes.
Yeah. So, because they are similar. And then the next one is the purity in that similarity. How closely they are similar. So there are about 7 different conditions for resonation. These are the first 2 simple ones. Similarity is the basically, when two people become similar to each other, or they have a tendency to long to be like the other one, or they have something in common and they use their commonness. They become very similar, so they resonate.
Well, there's a frequency involved there, is there not?
Pulse. There's a pulse.
The pulse.
Yeah,
the
because
peristalsis.
Yes, this pulse.
Rotation.
The pulse is the index for vibration. Frequency is the index for oscillation. So our body doesn't have frequency; it has pulse. And no,
a lot of people use that term. They don't use it properly. They misuse that term, then, don't they?
Exactly. Because it's a machine. Frequency is byproduct of oscillation. Oscillation means what? Circulation.
And there are no circles because there's movement.
Yes. Because there's rotation, and peristalsis. And oscillation doesn't have any of those. As I mentioned an example, for example, if I am in hospital, let's say all my pulses are perfect. So it shows a perfect oscillatory translation of my pulse on the EEG or EKG. But that has no vitality. That means it doesn't have vibration or pulse. So if I drop that right in front of you and you put it in my body, I won't come back to life. You see that? Because what it shows in EKG or EEG is oscillation. It's a frequency. It's not pulse or vibration, because vibration has vitality and vitality. Now, if you look at your pulse, 5 different pulses here at your wrist. Yeah. So
So,
no two pulse is the same.
so when we build a structure from earth, is there an inherent pulse to that shape, that form, and that function?
Yes, everything in creation has a pulse, whether it's a micro or macro or mega. Earth has a pulse, and that pulse, we refer to as sometimes as Schumann resonance.
Now, the phi dome used to store water, it deionizes the water.
Yes.
And what about the alkalinity?
Alkalinity, the water becomes very, very neutral. Distilled or ionized water is a pH of 7. In order to alkalinize it, then it needs to have salt. That's why you notice, in electrolytes, which is 5 different metals, sodium, which is part of the salt, is in charge of carrying the water into the cell. Okay, so that's why distilled water, the ionized water, it needs a little bit salt to it. And Glover salt, not white salt. These white salts are toxic.
Now, do you recommend, are there drops that people can add to their liquid drinks to create alkalinity?
Well, I would say salt and ionic minerals, because calcium, when it's in angstrom size, which is the size of the opening of the cell, dilation of the cell, when it's angstrom size, is very beneficial. So therefore, the regular Himalayan salt. I'm sorry, I mentioned Glover salt, not Glover salt, but Himalayan salt, the pink salt. That has all kind of minerals and trace minerals in it. So adding to that, since it's in a crystal form, it's very beneficial. But if I produce the white salt, it's very toxic.
And it's key for people to remember that viruses cannot flourish in an alkaline state.
Right. That is basically what it's called, host theory. I think I sent you a book. Avicenna talked about it 1,000 years ago. And then Antoine Béchamp, who was adversary of Pasteur, he talked about it, but 100 years ago. And what happened, is that it's not the potency of the germ, but rather than resistance of the host that induces acquirement of a disease. Because all the viruses and hosts, germs and everything are transitory. They go in and out of all living things' body, in and out. But soon as, we are hosting them, that means we are at a certain body pH, and body is not alkaline, then they multiply. When they multiply, they say you have that symptom.
So the food, the clothing, shelter, health, and education, in all aspects, those 5 aspects, we need to think in terms of synergy, sufficiency. We want to consider the foods we eat, the water we drink, to make sure that we have alkalinity.
Yes. So
The
if there's
shelters we build, we need certain angles, we need certain dimensions that.
Yes, that's why, I practice and develop something called phyometry. Phyometry means all the dimensions are in phi ratio, because every ratio in the creation is based on phi. It's the index of creation, not pi, but phi.
Pi is the index of creation.
Not pi. Pi is the index for circle, which nothing is circulating, everything is rotating and crystallizing and all that stuff.
Now, the earth materials to store water in that are shaped like a sphere or egg, what's the term you use? The eggroid?
And we can ectroid, like a
Ectroid.
spherical or you can have elliptical. Here you have ecliptical. So ecliptical, means like angular. Actuality is actuality.
Now, there's an enhancement that one gains from using those particular shapes.
Yes. First of all, it's resistance. For example, if you look at the egg, if you hold it on the long side, it's very difficult. You can squeeze and break it, but if you hold it at the belly, you can easily break.
Yeah.
So that's why they knew about this all along the history, all the architect builders.
So the process right now of people going to places in their lives where they want to be sustainable, they want to be self-replenishing, self-sufficiency and self-sustainability abundant in their all aspects of their lives. The water,
if you're trying,
the food, the clothing, the shelter, the education, all affects our health.
yes. So what happens, the water is the first step. The number one ingredient of all living things is water. And then it's salt, and then it's MSM. So these are very necessity, to have in our diets. Now, what happened if you're trying to provide developing assistance to any culture, a village or some places, these 5 basics should be integrated and offered as a package. Synergy instead of energy. Food, healthy food, they can grow their own food. They have to have a shelter, a roof over their head. So that has to be healthy, the same thing as the food has to be healthy. Now, homegrown food, like if you grow your own food, homegrown architecture. What does that mean? That means, whatever material you have right under your home. That means
Those
earth material, round earth. Okay. And education, that means, a father and mother and the family, they care about each other. It's an open, subjective communication. And then health. So instead of being engaged in sick care, which is the modern medicine, we have to be in health care. That means, self-sustaining the health. And that means, to be in alkaline state. So these are very basic that you can bring as a development to a village or to a group of the people or small or big communities.
I mentioned to you last week this discussion I was a part of. It was entitled Designing for Good.
Yes.
When we focus on these aspects of food, the shelter, health, education, and synergy, those serve as a foundation to be designing for good when you have an understanding of what materials to use,
yes,
what processes what shapes will actually create healthier water for you to drink, a healthier shelter for you to live in.
Yes.
All aspects of our lives become more refined.
Yes. And it becomes self-sufficient, sustainable. Self-sufficiency is sustainable. Temporary measures, or one-way systems, entropical, is not sustainable.
So there's really an advantage, developing countries haven't already invested in calculated obsolescence and, mass production. They're not into mass production. They're going to be looking more at production by the masses, right?
Yes, yes. Because
Like
then it becomes
I'm
local.
working with they build with their hands. They make baskets and they sew with sisal. Sisal?
Yeah. See, we have to respect the concept of indigenous. For example, you go to Africa, you go to South America, wherever you go, there is an indigenous culture. You have to respect it. You can't just all of a sudden impose on them, you have to live like me.
Right.
Now, you take that also into the um, uh, context of food. The food is also indigenous. Their building are indigenous. We can't change it all of a sudden to, because if I change it to this modern materials, all of a sudden, all the building material, all the food has gone through so much process and procedure in a practice which has become very chemical. That's why processed food, processed architecture, processed material is not good, because it's infusion of a lot of chemical in there.
But we can look around the planet and see that maybe in certain continents, they utilize certain shapes the same way they did in other continents. We can start seeing that certain practices
Yes.
are following the index of nature, that 5 metric understanding.
Yeah. And if you go constitution of the nature, it's the same context, but if you go different places, they maybe do it in a different style.
Oh.
Yeah, but it's the same context. I mean, they use earth material probably in South America or maybe in Middle East or Africa, but maybe they have their own way of using the earth material. So they have, it's the same context, but a different style, which is different people have different style. That's diversity. So it's the same context, but it could be a diversified approach. But the Constitution is not tampered with. Constitution is not altered. But their style and diversity is fine. They can have diverse, different way of shoveling, different way of making a brick. It's a diversity. Let them do it their ways.
So back in the times, Avicenna had a lot of very far-reaching concepts. Talk a little bit about what influences came from that. Was this originally, was this a mathematician, a person that this was named after?
Well, Avicenna was, his real name is Abu Ali Sina, but in the West, they call him Avicenna, or in English. All of the medical school before Pasteur, all over Europe, everywhere was host theory. Host theory went all the way to Avicenna. If you look at he was a scientist which had mastered connection and symbiotic relation between science, because you can't fragment science. So therefore, health, architecture, everything was under the same category. It was under the same concept, same constitution. You have to be following the constitution of nature. The constitution of nature when it comes to health, like for example, his masterpiece of Canon of Health, which is in about 7 different volumes, it's about this thick, is basically host theory. That's why Beauchamp was adversary of Pasteur, and many others who were adversary to Pasteur, they advocating Avicenna or Abu Ali Sina. So Avicenna was founder of this kind of concept about 1,000 years ago. Now, in 1982, in 1985, Pasteur passed away. 1985, he passed away. In 1982, he wrote a proclamation that some people like Dr. Ted Morters or some other people, they have a copy of it. He confessed to Beauchamp that I was wrong and you were right 3 years before he died. But that host theory is the correct way of going about the health. And that's why you notice animals, they are following a host theory. They don't go get drugs or vaccinated or this and that, you don't see any animals doing that.
Well, if they hang around humans, they might get a few shots.
Yeah, because I'll make money out of it. See, that's why the whole science of practicing naturopathic, it means to get you off the drug. But if I'm doing, a regular medicine, I'm trying to get you on the drug, allopathic. You see, there's a paradox in the perception. Respect to the both of them, it's a free choice of people to make, but what happened is, do you see any of the trees, or the trees in the jungle or anything like that? They ask for drugs, and when we drug them, we destroy them with fertilizer and pesticide and herbicide, and their product is so toxic we can't eat it.
The chances are the plants and animals were doing just fine.
So all we have to do, it's not monkey see, monkey do, just follow the constitution of creation. It was constituted in a perfect context and outline, and it's observable.
The constitution of nature.
Yeah. So don't come up with my ideas of condition and condition the tree, condition the animal, condition, all the, I read to you the number of animals we are suffering over the world per year. It was in your last show. So those have, those animals are cursing us because they can't have their own family. They can't have a constitution of the nature to have kids and all that, because they're either slaughtered or spaded, just like GMO animal, GMO people, GMO houses.
We're conditioning them to follow our set of rules, and it's not really the best choice to be making.
Yeah, it's animals, holocaust of the trees and everything, holocaust of the nature, because I can make money out of it.
So some of the structures made of earth have been around for thousands of years.
Yeah, I mean, let's say you go to China, you think they use the reinforcement bars, or steel reinforcement in the wall of China? How is it that has lasted so long? The Sophia was one of the seven wonders of the world. There was no beams, there was no reinforcement, there was no steel beam or wooden beam or nothing. It was mud. How did they do it? It was all fire arches. You go to Dome of the Rock the same way. How can it last for 100 years? There's another one. It's called. It's in Iraq. I have used it for a lot of design. It's a spiral building, and that building was purely mud, and it's almost like 120 feet tall. I'll send you the picture of it because I have used it for a lot of design that I have made. This building is 1,200 years old. An earthquake, rain, storm, nothing has damaged it. It's in a spiral building.
And it's 120 feet tall?
120 feet tall. That's
so it has
like
a structural integrity of its own based upon its shape.
Yeah, it's earth material.
Following the constitution of nature.
Yeah, it's rammed earth. When they do rammed earth, they take the mud and they maybe add some sand. Sometimes they add some straw or twigs, or if they can have access to lime, they add some lime. And then it becomes a caliccio calcrete, very strong. So that's very easy. A lot of places, they have access to those materials.
So the materials for this building are very available now to people.
Yeah. If you go, for example, to concrete versus rammed earth is very minimum water. They pack it like this, just they put the form and they pack it. And concrete is very water intensive. There's this tremendous amount of water is being used to do reinforce the concrete.
So the material they call cob,
Yes.
adobe, there's a lot of cultures have taken this practice and utilized it. They, like we said, you said it's the same process, but in a different context.
Different, the style, different diversity in the style.
But yet
But
there
it's
seems to be a commonality of certain styles traveling around the world being very utilized by humanity.
it's a unified concept of the nature constitution. Like we said, we need unity, but we need diversity. It's diversity that has innate longing for unity.
Now you feel the process of your studying, and you've been doing architecture since the 70s?
Since, early 70s, yeah.
And a lot of the concepts that you were dealing with, that's like 50 years ago.
Yes, yes. And some of my houses, which I can send you, it's like 30, 40 years old. And they're still, they're very self-sufficient. I haven't used insulation, and I can show you some of those, that the walls, they have breathing, inhale and exhale.
Insolation.
Yeah, insolation, yeah. That means, the wall has peristalsis, inhaling the heat and exhaling, inhaling the heat energy and exhaling.
So if 50 years ago you were thinking along these lines, and now the world is at a place where these thoughts seem to be beckoning more and more people's attention.
Yeah, and I was disgusted, with the theory and formula and the sign, that equation, equal sign, because it doesn't govern any aspect of life or nature. So I just was, I was probably, I don't know, I can't call myself rebel, because I was mostly surrendering to constitution of what you see, which is the best observation, empirical data, instead of experimental. So that was my experience in life. And there are other people who are doing this, I can name a few people, even in Texas, there's a man by the name of Plenty Fisk, who's been doing, this kind of earth material for over 50 some years. He's in Austin, Texas. There was another guy, Egyptian guy by name of, I forgot his name now. But anyway, he started one building in Abiquiu, New Mexico. And it was all mud, and it's been perfectly fine, for now. It has become a very popular community in New Mexico, Abiquiu.
Abiquiu.
Yeah. He wrote a book called Architecture for Poor. That means you can build your own house almost, if you want to put your own label and your kids and your wife and all that stuff, you can do it for free. Architecture for Poor. Hassan Fathi, that's what his name is. Hassan Fathi from Egypt. They invited him. He came to US in New Mexico, and he stood one building. It called Abiquiu, New Mexico. There was only one building. I visited there, but it was like 45, 6 years ago. I forgot how many years. And it was just one building he did. And he showed people how to do it. I have a picture of that very first building, a lot of pictures of it. And he wrote a book called Architecture for Poor, so that all the poor people can have homes. So if you want to look at some of the earth building and all that, his book is very good. Architecture for Poor.
And his name again was?
Hassan Fathi. Fathi. Yeah. And now there are some people, he has passed away a long time ago, but there are people have watched him, and one of these networks went and interviewed a lady who is teaching his stuff.
Mhm.
So if you're interested in that, I can maybe find out, uh, but if you even do some search on ABIQ, I think it's ABIQUE, something like that, uh, now when I talk to somebody there, and they say, oh, it's almost a little town now.
So his last name you think is Fathi, Fathi,
FATHI.
Hi.
And if you and even if you go on Amazon and I have his book here, his books, uh, if you do architecture for poor, his name should show up. I can look it up for you now. Yeah. So there are many people, who have tried to propagate this kind of ideas. Um,
But they're becoming fashionable again because people are seeing
yes,
the necessity to change.
yes, because there is a scarcity of lumber. All the forests, and if you travel from here to Washington, all the forests are denuded, which is a massacre of the nature.
Mm-hmm.
That's why this price of lumber right now all of a sudden is going sky high. So the people who have started Ramp Earth, uh, they also, some of them, they have become creative. You can put different dye in your in your what do you call, in your dirt,
Mm-hmm.
and you get all these beautiful patterns of the walls. There is a house in my daughter and my son-in-law, they want to move to Washington. They found the house on a ranch near where is that, near Spokane, uh, and it's been built with rammed earth, and they really design these dirt, that you get the layers just like a sunset. So
Mm-hmm.
they have become very creative with it.
Well, I've seen some houses, actually buildings in the city of Chicago, where people took a conventional building and covered the inside with earth with cob treatment
Yeah,
and did different coloring, so it
yeah,
all looked very earth based and very colorful.
yeah. You know, I read this story. Johnny Carson had a very fancy home in Malibu, but it was really high tech with all kind of electronic, this, that, and it wasn't. He couldn't feel comfortable. He goes to Mexico and in a mud house, like it was a, and all of a sudden he sensed his inner sensor all of a sudden start ringing, that he feels comfortable. So he comes back to Malibu and he builds a house just like that, that the floors were all sand and you walk on sand.
Sweet.
Yeah. So just I think, some people, it wakes people up.
So when we started discussing, we were speaking of the phi dome, storage for water, deionizing the water, and we see that the process coordinates with the circadian rhythms. You said because of the Schumann
Yes.
resonance is enhanced
Yes.
by the shape.
It's the pulse of the earth.
So the shape in conjunction with the pulse of the earth produces the synergy that occurs in the water.
It's resonance. The resonance, similarity and adhering to the constitution of the earth. Um, it causes, resonation. When you are in resonating with something which is the earth, which is our uh, let me, I misspelled his name. His name is Hassan, last name is Fathy. That is, yeah, it's the 300.
Hassan.
Hassan, and last name is Fathy.
Fathy.
Yeah, I said Thi, so that's Thy.
Agriculture for the poor.
Yeah, it's
Architecture for the poor.
architecture for the poor. Yeah, and Chicago Press, they have produced it, and Amazon has it. Yeah, it's if I go, if I just put the same thing, I have the book. I have one of his very first, because actually early 70, I did apprenticeship for him, and I have pictures of it, and we had these molds, that we had to mix the mud and put it in there to make bricks. So I was doing manual labor there for credit. Yeah, yeah. So
You were learning by doing.
yeah. So he came from Egypt, and that was his first building. We all helped him to build it.
Beautiful.
Let me
Well,
just
in closing, what would you like to share with us in closing this discussion?
Basically, what we do to others will be due to us. Now, if it's animals, if it's plants, if it's the earth, if it's the air, or if it's just water, whatever we do to others, be due to us. If I do toxicity to the water, it'll be due to me. If I do damages to the trees, and the natures and all that, it'll be due to me, because it governs by the field and flow. So what we do to others, that other doesn't mean, human. It means animals. It means trees. It's a forest. It will be due to me.
So if we can think wonderful thoughts for all creation, to think positive towards creation and follow the constitution of nature.
Yeah. Diseasation, which is disease, diseasation is a pandemic of what I put into the life of others.
A pandemic of what you put into
lives of others.
The lives of others.
Yeah. So that's why, whatever I put into the lives of others will be due to me. So that's what, and when it's going to do to me, now you can call it curse, or cause and effect or whatever. As a result of that, I have a field which it's very difficult for me to flow. That's why I'm ill, sick.
But if you apply the constitution of nature,
yeah,
you're going to harvest vibration.
Yeah. So that's why good for all, harm to none, surrender, submission, and service to Creator and creation in peace with joy.
Oh, yes.
Like, for example, you're doing something in Africa, you are doing it with joy.
Yes, indeed.
So that's why, it becomes yeah.
When, as a musician, I think of applying sound, love, and light.
Yes.
So my brother, bless you. Thank you so much for taking the time.
Thank you. You're welcome.
Until the next time.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Love unknown to earth, reaching in our direction. Translating dreams into future perfection. Like some new language, without past, present, or future time, for the magic of the moment. Time and time again, tracing sweet inspiration. I sleep in other beds of reality, waking rich with hidden treasure. My soul springs into songs I never knew. Jumping in heart first, hypnotized by the flow, building pyramids of prayer, deep in nighttime energy, without an image to wear. I look in empty spaces, listening to the silence, refreshing myself anew. Holding on to the trance from the inside out, understanding the magic of music between us, living realities where everything that is good. Holding on to the trance from the inside out, understanding the magic of music between us, living realities where everything that is good.
Well, that's it for here and now. But until we meet again, this has been Louis-Virie Blanche thanking you for listening to Conversations with Elders on Glastonbury Radio 432. Bless you.
Quantum physics in the kitchen sink, the energy that follows the thoughts you think. Quantum physics and the cosmic sea, laws of nature too heavy for me. It's too cosmic, much too cosmic for me. Much too cosmic, much too cosmic for me.